This week on Jerusalem Dateline, for the first time in more than a decade, an Israeli prime minister commits to the two-state solution. Is it a political move? And protesters filled the streets of Iran in the latest sign of widespread discontent with the regime. Plus, the recent arrival of red heifers in Israel. Is it a prophetic sign that the Messiah is on the way? And more Jewish visits on the Temple Mount than any time since the Roman destruction of the biblical Jewish temple in 70 AD. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. For the first time in more than a decade, an Israeli prime minister has recommitted to a two-state solution with the Palestinians. As CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl reports, his comments didn't sit well with many Israelis.
Prime Minister Yair Lapid told the UN General Assembly that Israel's economic and military strength enables it to strive for peace with the Arab world, including Palestinians.
An agreement with the Palestinians based on the two states for two people is the right thing for Israel's security, for Israel's economy, and for the future of our children.
Lapid sees peace as not a compromise or weakness, but a courageous decision. Israel, he says, has one condition:
that the future Palestinian state will be a peaceful one, that will not become another terror base from which to threaten the well-being and the very existence of Israel.
His speech drew fire, especially from former Prime Minister and opposition leader Benjamin Netanyahu.
After the right-wing government, led by me, removed the Palestinian state from the world agenda, after we brought 4 historic peace agreements with Arab countries that bypassed the Palestinian vote, Lapid is bringing the Palestinians back to the forefront of the world stage and putting Israel right into the Palestinian hole.
Even before the speech, Lapid's coalition predecessor, Naftali Bennett, blasted the rumored announcement, writing on Facebook that there is no place or logic to raise the idea of a Palestinian state. Former ambassador to the UN, Danny Danone, calls the topic a political ploy.
We have elections coming up in only a few weeks from today, and I haven't seen even one party, including Lapid's party, mentioning the idea of two states. And we know that there is no real partner in the Palestinian side today.
Even Lapid referred to the aftermath of Israel's 2005 unilateral withdrawal from the Gaza Strip.
In less than a year, Hamas, a murderous terror organization, came to power. Since we left Gaza, over 20,000 rockets and missiles have been fired at Israel. All of them at civilians, all of them at our children.
On Iran, the prime minister accused the Islamic regime of conducting an orchestra of hate against Israel and beyond.
They hate and they kill Muslims who think differently, like Salman Rushdie and Mahsa Amini. Their hate is a way of life. It is a way to preserve the oppressive rule.
He pointed out it's the only UN member bold enough to openly state it wants to destroy another.
Iran has declared time and time again that it is interested in the total destruction of the state of Israel. And this building is silent.
Lapid added if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, he believes it would use it.
The only way to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is to put a credible military threat on the table, and then, and only then, to negotiate a longer and stronger deal with them.
Danone says while Lapid touched on all the right points, he didn't go far enough.
We all expected him to push stronger, especially after we heard President Raisi denying the Holocaust a few days ago. I think he should have been stronger on these issues, tougher on these issues. I think we should have demanded more countries not to attend the speech of Raisi.
Earlier, Israel's UN ambassador Gilad Erdan walked out of the General Assembly during Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi's speech, displaying a family picture. 2 days before, Raisi said further research is needed to verify the Holocaust really happened. He asked for proof. Here are my Auschwitz surviving grandmothers. To the ambassadors in the GA, leave his speech. A dictator deserves no voice. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Protesters are filling the streets throughout Iran following the recent death of a woman in police custody. The demonstrations are the latest sign of widespread discontent with the Islamic regime. On September 16, 22-year-old Mahsa Amini fell into a coma and died following her arrest in Tehran by the morality police. Her crime? Not wearing a hijab, the Islamic head covering women are required to wear in public. Her death sparked protests in the capital of Tehran and many other cities, often with chants, "Death to the dictator."
It is important that we understand the significant shift in Iranian people's protest against the regime since 2018, that people are asking for overthrow the regime to the entire system.
Scenes include women burning their hijabs and protesters attacking the police. These demonstrations follow others in 2019, as well as from 2017 through 2020. Many wonder whether these protests could potentially lead to overthrowing the regime. Myra Yazdari was born in Iran and escaped in 2012, and now serves as producer of CBN News Farsi.
It has the potential, but as we all know, the regime is brutal and people are left alone by the international community. They need support.
Yet instead of criticism, the UN General Assembly provided a platform this week to Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, also known as the Butcher of Tehran.
Who is really known for the massacre in 1988, that he ordered the death of thousands of innocents. But now he is given a global stage. Now Europeans, the leaders of the free world, are shaking hands with the terrorists, and they leave Iranian innocent people by themselves alone instead of supporting them as they seek freedom.
While negotiations over Iran's nuclear program are on pause, if an agreement is signed, Yazdari and others say it will fund Iran's Middle East agenda.
They're going to fund their proxies. They're going to empower forces, IRGC, police, Basijis inside the country to kill their own people.
As before, when protests have erupted, Iran is again shutting down the country's internet. Elon Musk has applied for a sanctions exemption so his SpaceX company can provide satellite internet service so Iranians can tell the world what is happening to their people. Well, Israel is long known for its military capability. Given the country's size and with enemies on all borders, Israel realizes the importance of innovation in defense and sharing knowledge with allies. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Saul shows us how that's done.
These helicopters are part of a multi-dimensional live fire exercise attended by 1,500 high-ranking officers, including U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley.
All of us are like-minded. We're all allies and partners of one kind or another, and we are all giving way together to try to figure out what the future operational environment is and to innovate and develop our forces, our organization, our doctrines, our structures, and our equipment in order to meet future challenges.
Here at the Tselim training base, the Israel Defense Forces hosted some 20 countries for an innovation conference. Their aim? Using technology effectively in order to win the war and save lives.
I think the big punchline of all that is multi-dimensional. How we act in a multi-dimensional battlefield and prepare our forces in the air, on the ground, and in the sea.
The objective is to use innovation in dealing with challenges like the ability of enemies to easily obtain tech like drones to use against Israel. One example is creatively gathering enemy intelligence and getting it to the field as quickly as possible. The three-day conference culminated with the live fire exercise, displaying Israel's capability from the air and ground through its use of helicopters, planes, tanks, drones, and foot soldiers. IDF International spokesman Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht sees the conference as a compass in terms of pointing the way to military diplomacy.
We know that when we are acting together with other militaries, we can learn from each other, we can engage, and the fact now that the central command commander here is also engaging with the region.
He adds that it can also send a message on the importance of international stability. Julie Stahl, CBN News, IDF Tselim Base, Israel.
Coming up, some say a recent delivery from Texas to Israel signals a prophetic prerequisite. to the return of the Messiah. The Jewish sage Maimonides from the 12th century said throughout the first and second temples there were 9 red heifers. He said the 10th would signal the appearance of the Messiah. That's why many are excited about this arrival. These are the red heifers that landed at Israel's Ben Gurion Airport. Rabbis believe the ashes of a red heifer are necessary for purifying priests to serve in a future temple. The heifers were discovered and brought to Israel with the help of the Bonei Israel Building Israel organization and its team leader, Byron Stinson. Rabbis from the Temple Mount Institute approached Stinson about the unique cattle.
They said, Byron, could you look in Texas and find us a red heifer? I wasn't expecting that, and it was shocking to me to think about it, but I know a lot of ranchers, and I know a little bit about cattle, being from Texas. And I always say yes to these Jewish rabbis because they're my friends, and I love them, and why not?
This began an in-depth process of finding the rare heifer that meets key stipulations found in the Bible.
The Bible gives us a clue as to the significance of the red heifers here in Numbers chapter 19, verse 1 and 2, where it says that God spoke to Moses and Aaron saying, "This is the ritual law that God has commanded, instruct the children of Israel to bring you a red cow without blemish, in which there is no defect, and on which no yoke has been laid." So it says that we're supposed to take a perfectly red cow with no white hairs or dark hairs at all, and a cow that no yoke has ever been on. So as a result, it's very, very rare to find a baby cow that is completely red.
We got busy. I used my technology people out of my businesses. First, we identified the type of cows that would be good. And then once we located the actual farms, we sent out messages to them and started hunting. And of course, they just wanted me to find one red heifer, but I just got committed. After I got to looking, I decided we can find more than that. And so happy that we were able to bring 5.
The ashes of the red heifer would be used to purify water from the Gihon spring in the city of David. Just a few ashes could purify thousands of gallons of water. That water can be then purify priests from any contact with a dead body, so they can offer sacrifice in the temple.
Some Jews go every single day to a ritual bath, to a mikveh, in order to approach God in prayer in purity. However, it is not the same because we don't have the red heifer. Once we have the red heifer, we'll be completely pure and we'll be able to rebuild the temple.
As I read the Bible, this rebuilding of the temple happens during a time when the world's in need for it. And I think we're at that time, just as a person that's watching events in the world, that we really need to come back to our roots and back to our God. I think we're very close to that time. I really do.
The red heifer must also be 2 years old. These cattle are just around a year old and could qualify in just over a year.
So if they're able to make it without growing the white hairs or black hairs, I think with 5 of them we have a really good chance of that. Then they will be the first one in 2,000 years.
The Jewish sage Maimonides from the 12th century said throughout the first and second temples there were 9 red heifers. He said the 10th would signal the appearance of the Messiah. That's why many are excited about this arrival. Up next, more Jewish visits on the Temple Mount than any time since the Roman destruction of the biblical Jewish temple in 70 AD. Jews visited the Temple Mount more than 50,000 times during the last year. According to the Israeli organization Beyadenu, that's the most since the Roman Empire destroyed the second biblical Jewish temple in 70 AD. The figure represents visits and not the total number of visitors. But while visits are up and expected to rise, the status quo still prohibits any prayers except Muslim prayer on the Temple Mount. Here's a story we did a few years ago about the complexities of the Holy Plateau and efforts to allow Jews and other non-Muslims to pray there. Muslims call it Haram al-Sharif, the noble sanctuary in Arabic. Al-Aqsa, which includes the mosque and the entire compound, is the third holiest site in Islam. Muslims claim only they are allowed to pray there.
Muslims have to pray, but others, Christians and Jews, they can visit, just visit. Not to make pray inside.
Archaeology backs up the Bible, which says it's our holiest place. It's the center. From the beginning of the Jewish people, many think from the beginning of the world, it's the center.
For years, rabbis said it was forbidden for Jews to even set foot there, let alone pray in the Temple Mount, because it was too holy. Now more and more religious and non-religious Jews want their rights to this most holy place. Linda Olmert is part of Haliba, the initiative for Jewish freedom on the Temple Mount.
Because we want freedom for everybody to pray on the Temple Mount. Isaiah says it will be a place for all nations.
A Palestinian terrorist attempted to assassinate Yehuda Glick, Haliba's leader. Glick survived, and Israeli security later shot and killed the gunman. This incident, along with constant rioting in the Palestinian sector, highlight the growing tensions over the Temple Mount.
We as a government, we are against Jewish prayers on the Temple Mount, simply because of reasons that have to do with our commitment to the status quo that was agreed upon back in 1967.
Since the 1967 Six-Day War, Jordan has kept religious control over the Temple Mount. Israel maintains security, and only Muslims can pray there. Yossi Kuperwasser is Director General of the Strategic Affairs Ministry.
We believe that by committing ourselves to this status quo, we help keep the peace and security in Jerusalem.
But Olmert says it's all about civil rights.
The only place I know, certainly in Israel, where there is a real violation of civil rights as we have come to expect them in the Western world, in free democratic countries, is against Jews on the Temple Mount.
And she says there's plenty of room for everyone.
And I believe that when the Messiah comes, he'll solve all the problems. Until then, I believe that there's a place for all nations on the Temple Mount.
Still ahead, the Bible points the way to the biblical fall feast with the blast of the shofar. We're entering a special season of biblical holidays. These Jewish holy days begin with Rosh Hashanah, the traditional New Year, and include Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. But there's more to this season, and the Bible points the way. Rosh Hashanah literally means head of the year, the new year. But biblically, it's much more than that. In the book of Leviticus, it's called Yom Teruah, the day of the blowing of trumpets, or ram's horn, the judgment day.
The only commandment during Rosh Hashanah is actually to hear the sound of the shofar. Okay. And so everybody gathering in the synagogue to hear the sound of the shofar. It's something that people connect to their soul, to hear the sound of the shofar.
The piercing sound of the shofar is meant to remind the hearers to repent of their sins and to make things right with their brothers and sisters. The rabbis say that reconciliation with God and man confounds the enemy.
A shofar is a musical instrument made from a horn. This is the oldest musical instrument. And the Jewish Orthodox we have a committee to hear the sound of the shofar during New Year, our Judgment Day.
As part of a two-family business, Eli Ribach is a third-generation shofar maker.
The process is grinding, polishing, then we open a mouthpiece. This is quick, but it's a lot of experience and a lot of hand work because each horn is a different size, different thickness, so you have to be experienced to make a good shofar.
The ram's horn is used as the traditional shofar because when Abraham showed his willingness to sacrifice his son Isaac, God provided a ram to be used in his place.
Actually, all type of horns are kosher except of a cow.
That's because the Jewish people don't want to remind God of the time Israel worshipped the golden calf in the wilderness. Besides the distinctive tones of the different horns, there are 3 different blasts sounded. The shofar is blown in synagogues and at the Western Wall each morning for a month before the holiday to give plenty of time for repentance.
You and I both know that we need a lot of reminders in our daily life to repent, to think of the things of God. It's like an alarm clock for the soul.
Reebok says it's not just Jewish people who blow the shofar.
We sell the shofar all over the world. We sell it to Jewish, to Christian, Messianic people, evangelist people.
Rosh Hashanah is the feast of the 7th month, but in Jewish tradition represents the new year.
At the coronation of the kings of Israel, the shofars would blow. They would announce the new king, or they would announce the coming of the king. Oftentimes in the Christian world, shofars are blown throughout the entire year. But in Judaism and in Jewish practice, those shofars are only blown for a very limited time throughout the year, during this time, the month of Elul and Rosh Hashanah.
Boaz Michael, founder of First Fruits of Zion, says that's a foreshadow for those who believe in Yeshua, Jesus.
And they tell us something, they're speaking to us, they're reminding us of something. And one of the things they're reminding us of is the creation of the world, the coming of the King Messiah one day at this time, the coronation of his kingdom here on earth. This is what the shofar is to remind us of, and it speaks to us every day when we hear that sound.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can also access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And don't forget to sign up for our email blast so you can continue to receive all of our exciting CBN content. To all our Jewish friends, Shana Tova, Happy New Year. May this be a sweet and prosperous New Year. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.